problems with the trailing PE. First, we're gonna make trailing, instead of trailing, we're gonna use forward. And two, we're gonna use some sort of predicted average earnings over the next certain number of years. Since we have growth estimates for the next 5 years, we might as well go ahead and use them, right? But before that, for Coke and Pepsi, remember, they're also expected to grow at a different level next year. For Coke and Pepsi, FPE based on 1 year, FPEs are let's go back to Coke. What is it? It's under statistics. You can find basic PE in the main page, but FPE is in it's 1965. If the forward PE is lower than the trailing, that means company is expected to grow. Come on. See, 1953. Almost the same. Compared to trailing PE 1 year, which was 22.6 and 26.6. Let me make sure that's the correct number for Pepsi, for Coke. Yeah. So even 1 year forward comparison make the big difference. So based on forward PEs, I can't differentiate between the two. Remember, for this kind of stuff, that second digit is essentially a random number. Remember, these are based on estimates. So there is a lot of uncertainty with it to begin with. If you want to see, I have Coke. If you go to Analysis tab, the first group actually shows you the average estimates of earnings, including the low and the high. Just let's look at the 2024 estimates. For Coke, it's between 252 and 272. There are 22 analysts that are making estimates. It averages at 262. And trailing forward PEs are based on those estimates. Not on 2024, but over the next 12 months, which means pretty much next quarter and the first 3 quarters of 2024. Which we don't see here explicitly, but it's there. I mean, that's a lot of difference. So even probably if it's a 2-digit number for PE, even the number after the decimal is essentially random variation based on forecast errors. So 19.65 versus 19.53 for statistical purposes are essentially the same. I mean, if I had the individual data on those earnings estimates, we could actually make statistically meaningful analysis, calculate a T-ratio for difference and so on, but doesn't matter. So in this case, we immediately know that we are not going to look at the trailing PE stuff because they're based on past. And past may not necessarily be a good guide for future for two purposes. One, maybe something special happened last year. Okay? We don't know. I mean, we may know if you go into details, but if all you're doing, you're using your computer system to kind of generate trading ideas based on these ratios alone, don't look at the past, because judging what those PE differentials mean for last year may depend upon the details, which you may not be looking at. For example, let's look at the financials. For example, let's look at these are annual. Let's look at quarterly. And for some reason, these two quarters are low. Maybe it's seasonality, I don't know. But maybe something special is going on. And that's typically not the case for companies like Coke, but for other companies it may be. And two, as we mentioned, there may have been earnings management last year. Typically, forecasts are made assuming there's not going to be much earnings management, because you can't predict how they're going to do the management. I mean, they do talk, yes.
So, like, is there really a benefit in investing in like a managed mutual fund over just like an index fund that tracks the same thing? Because isn't it like
as a general rule,
really small changes?
you're wasting your money if you're investing into a managed investment fund. I did my thesis on mutual funds. What I did was a little bit different, but if you look at the statistics over a 1 year span, typically 80% of managed funds underperform their benchmarks after the fees. Before fees, some of them maybe 50% overperform. Over 10-year periods of time, you find only a handful of managed funds that outperform their benchmark even before the fees. And some of them outperform even after the fees. But the trouble is, that could have happened by chance. I mean, there are thousands of funds, right? By chance, 1, 2, 4, 5 will outperform anyway. So on a statistical sense, it doesn't make any sense at all. Let me give you an example. Let's look at TIAA, large cap growth fund. What? Let's do a search. Or let's do another fund. Anyway, I can't find it, but Okay, let's do this. TRLCX. This is an actively managed fund. Okay. Let's look at performance over 10 years. 665%. Okay. Large cap value. Oh, let's look at the summary. Come on. They typically have the expense ratio. Years. It's 66 basis points. So for each $10,000 you have invested into this fund, every year you're going to pay $66 in management fee and expenses. Okay. And that doesn't include any brokerage fees for transactions. Let's look at, for example, Vanguard Large Cap Value Index Fund. Or let me find out from Robinhood an ETF in that category. Okay, Russell 1000 value. That's large cap and value. And this is for iShares. It's not even Vanguard. Where is the expense ratio? 19 basis points. Vanguard typically is even lower. That probably would be 5 or 6 basis points. Every year, you're leaving about 0.5% on the table by going to the managed fund. And historically, they do not outperform.